Okay, guys, it's 3:30. We do have a forum, so we're going to get started off all the pedestrian committee meetings to order. And you please take a roll call, please, young lady.
Tracy Flukie.
Here.
Jessica Atkinson. Here. Dale Schmitz.
Yeah.
Kim Shannock was going to join us virtually, but
I'm here on my phone.
Thank you. And
Okay.
Michelle, is it Krasowski?
All right, let's all stand for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For a motion in regard to the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dale. Second by Jessica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Action on minutes. Consider discuss act on the August 11th, 2025 bicycle and pedestrian committee meetings. Any changes or anything? Otherwise, a motion to approve is in
I'll motion to approve.
order. Motion by Dale. All second. Second by Jessica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Items for discussion and possible action. Consider, discuss, act on bicycle and pedestrian comprehensive plan update. And we have Devin here. Michelle, for your, just for who you know, Devin is from Brown County, and he is doing his plan from Brown County, so he's doing an update of our bicycle and pedestrian plan for us. And you probably know who Rex is, I would imagine. He's the Parks and Recreation Director. And Jessica, board member, and Dale. So that's kind of pretty. And with that, I will hand it over to Devin.
All right. I guess not to put you on the spot too much more, but do you know kind of what we're doing here? Or do you want a brief introduction?
If you would give me a brief introduction,
Okay.
so I know that
Sure.
that's straight.
Yep. Yeah. So what we've been working on kind of over this whole year is updating the village's bicycle and pedestrian plan, or I should say pedestrian and bicycle plan. And yeah, so I've been working on that, but in coordination with village staff and the committee. And so a lot of kind of before now, we had did a public input survey, which you may have seen. That was, I think, around June, maybe. And then, working on kind of the research part and updating things. And so we've been working through that. More recently, we had been, I think the last we had a kind of a workshop meeting in October to kind of iron out the goals and objectives, which are in this section. And then also to talk about where there's existing sidewalks and bike facilities, and then also kind of identifying the key priorities for where things could go in the future. And so where we're at today with this is I've worked on getting the first two chapters ready. So this is more the background information and kind of setting the stage for the rest of the plan, but bringing this to you all today to get input on it. And yeah, I guess now what I'm hoping today is, again, I want to cover kind of the top high level things that have been updated, or at least things that are more noteworthy between so this is the existing plan. So things that have been changed more from this plan to this plan. And that's, I want to cover that and then really get feedback from you all on if there's anything within this section, within these two chapters that I may have missed or need some tweaking. So then we can hopefully kind of have this part looking good. And then, and I'm kind of skipping ahead to next steps, but working on kind of the back half of the plan. And my intent would be to bring that to you all in December to review that. But I'll get into that a little bit more. Okay. That's kind of,
Okay.
Oh, do you have any questions
No.
about that? Yeah, so as I was saying, wanted to talk about the updates. And I guess my quick disclaimer is there may be things that you might see, they're like, oh, this is not in here. And it, depending on what it is, it may end up being in the back half of the plan. So I will note that, if those questions come up. But yeah, so the first, I will start with, if you want to advance the slide, please. Yep. So first chapter, or chapter 1 is the introduction. And maybe if I can just kind of go through these things really quickly and then take questions and comments. For this, things that, so the visual part I updated just to kind of give it a fresh look. But a lot of things in the first chapter are continuation from the existing plan. And so we had discussed too about kind of things that need updating versus things that we feel are still relevant. So kind of the first thing that I updated in this is right at the beginning, and it starts on page 3. And this is under the guiding principles. And I believe this section previously was further back in the existing plan. But this is another thing that I wanted to move forward just again, so we kind of establish the big picture and vision up front. Regarding, so the previously, and for a lot of other plans, it was the 4, 5, and 6 E's, which are engineering, education, enforcement,
And
yeah, there's, so, and that was kind of a framework for approaching bicycle and pedestrian planning, and that had come out of Safe Routes to School plans. More recently, there's been kind of a shift away from that and a shift towards the safe system approach, and specifically the U.S. Department of Transportation. This is kind of what their framework for bicycle and pedestrian planning should be. And again, it's always up to the individual municipality or area and kind of what they want to focus on. But I thought at least like including this, I believe these are good things to consider. And again, they're, it's not like a hard and fast rule, but it's, again, more principles on approaching planning for new sidewalks or bike lanes or that sort of thing. So again, this part's kind of the quick overview of that, but there's a lot of resources out there. I'm still learning more about it too, so I won't claim to be an expert on this stuff, but what people, kind of where this is coming from was, it's called the Vision Zero approach, or I don't know if that's even the right, just Vision Zero, which is there should be no deaths, on roadways, or we should be working towards having 0 deaths. Now, obviously we're not in a perfect world. That's the thing that we're aspiring to. But again, and the idea behind that is that many things could be preventable just through design, and considering, how people might make mistakes and trying to make it so it's, I guess, harder, or if the mistakes are someone makes a mistake, it's less catastrophic. So kind of minimizing that. So that's what that section is about. And that's definitely new. Then moving from there, so 1.3 or, well, goals, objectives, and policies, but the policies actually got moved, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So the goals and objectives in the existing plan were also further back, and in discussion with the group previously, and with staff, we felt that it was important to get this more front and center and kind of easy to find right up front. So that's how these got moved here. The issues and opportunities, again, for you, Michelle, was something we worked through as a group, and also these were kind of what we gleaned out of the public information or the public survey too. So some of these things are kind of the same from what's in the existing plan, but a few things changed. So the goals and objectives, are in this section. And then just, as I mentioned, the policies, to me, those seemed they're more concrete things in my mind, or at least how they were written. And so it made more sense, again, to me to move that further back where the plan gets more action oriented. If that's something that maybe there's disagreement on, or if you all would like to see that still here, I think that's certainly something that could be moved back. But it made sense to me to kind of couple it with, again, where the action items are. And then the rest of the chapter is demographics, which was updated for everything based on recent census data, or where census data wasn't available, the American Community Survey, which are estimates. So that kind of as close as we can get with the data that we have for that information. And again, that's just helping understand more about the community. So that's kind of what I have on chapter 1. And if any of you have questions or comments on that, I would, welcome those now.
So we're going to do this chapter by chapter? Is that kind of how?
Yeah, I think, unless you want me to just go
No.
through the second part. And
No, I think it's better to knock one off before we start on another one.
And I know, again, some of this stuff is just kind of, I don't know, if I call the demographics dry, I don't know if anyone's gonna.
Interesting though.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so, I don't know how many comments there will be on that, so just, if there's anything you want to discuss here in this chapter, time.
I like the graphic, the steps in the planning process. That lays it out really clear and it's easier to understand
Yes.
how things work and build off of each other.
Yeah, and that was something too that I made sure, reflected kind of the intro to that section. Again, the relationship between the different things. The other thing I will say too, because this is still a work in progress, I think, some numbering might need to change, and I might revise headings. So it's not final, but just my other disclaimers.
So I was reading this, Devin, and
Page.
I'm on 1.3.1 on page 5. This is page 5. I'm not
Okay.
sure what is in the original one. Most people probably are not going to read this, but it says that public input survey results were compiled. Do you want to say the public input survey from 2025, or is that not necessary? That's
Not a bad idea, because we've done
Multiple.
in previous years, a long time ago, so it kind of narrows
it's
down
towards
where-
the bottom.
what are those results?
Under issue.
It says it
Right here,
Yeah.
public survey, input survey,
Okay.
were completed or compiled.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, so they know that it was just
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
late.
good idea.
Right, yeah.
Good comment.
Yeah, and I guess actually, so that's a good thing. Something else, I guess I would ask of you all if you have an opinion on it. So I guess the survey results are summarized more or less here with the top issues and opportunities. And I was planning on including the full results, and at least initially thinking that would just be an appendix in the back. Is there any opinions on having it up in here at all?
No,
In an appendix,
Okay.
my personal opinion, but.
Yeah.
you're saying for a reference.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I'll add that too.
Yeah,
just
I
so
like
that's
that.
here in this section where to find those.
I don't know if where it says the public input survey, if you would want to put in appendix
Yeah,
5 or
Yeah,
10,
yeah, that's
whenever
what-
you get that done.
yeah, I just
Okay.
made that note, so I'll make sure to it's clear where to
Yeah, because I'm sure if somebody was really seriously interested, they'd like to see what people, how they responded, so. Oh, let's see here, oh, that's over. Um, The only thing that I think you have references someplace else, so I want to be careful. I don't want to sound like I'm nitpicking here. I just read it and it didn't sound right to me. Under goal 1, number 2, which is on page 13, it says this includes improving connections across the Fox River. I'm wondering if we shouldn't put in there, and I missed the last meeting, I had some of these notes here, but to include, this includes improving connections to the Fox River. Not across, because we're not gonna control their connections on that side. It's just a
Sure.
play on words. And
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Somebody reads this, they're gonna know.
Mhm.
So you can leave it the way it is, or.
I guess, yeah, for the rest of you, how would you feel about adding, or changing that from Across.
To two.
to 2?
I think that's fine. I mean, that's very true. I mean, the bridges and stuff are there already. It's not like we're gonna be putting a new bridge in.
No,
Well, and I know, and kind of both, well, I think there's been some hope, we call it very big hope, that someday there will be a way to cross the Fox River
I like that.
by 172.
Yeah, that's.
And I think that may have been kind of why that was referenced that way, but it's also something that it's going to be dependent on people beyond the village. So yeah, if it makes more sense to just say, focus on getting there versus across, I will change that. But if you want to leave it as kind of an aspiration, I think
that's just my thoughts, so it's up to the group. And we gotta vote on it. It's just a matter of which sound. It just doesn't, to me, it just doesn't, this includes improving connections across the Fox River. We're not improving the connections across, we're improving connections to the Fox River Trail.
Or do you want to like wordsmith it that it's more like, 'cause I think you're saying like it was essentially to connect both sides. So instead of like, yeah, you're
Yes.
not worrying about what's on that side,
Yeah.
but we're
Yep.
worrying about the connectivity.
Yep,
So is there a way that
whatever
you
words
can-
would do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to step on their toes in Green Bay.
Connectivity between both sides of the river or
What do you
something
mean?
like that. Like, because I think that's ultimately what you're trying to say is that. Because I think if you just say to the river, depending where you are in the village and what it is, we already have some of that. So I think if you just say, because yeah, it's not worrying about the other across it, but it's worrying about the connections between the two.
To the river, so well, we already
Have it,
routes to the river.
right.
So I like, to the Fox River Trail east, or something, you know what I mean? I don't,
Yeah, you're right.
Again, this-
Even just to say to the Fox River, that's not right neither. We want to get to the other side.
Right, yeah.
So we want to get to the Fox River Trail
Improving-
or
Maybe you could say
place
connectivity
connections to the
between
east side of the river,
east and west side trails.
because it's not just the Fox River.
I think you could say east and west side trails, like, because it really is the connectivity of both sides of the water.
How about the east side of the Fox River? Because then it gives us access to Depew,
Right.
Green Bay.
172.
Well, Green Bay, we go through Green Bay.
Yeah,
So connectivity.
East side of the river.
to the
East side of the Fox River.
Good call.
Yes. All right.
And then goal number 2, number 1 on page 7. And maybe I'm not thinking this way, but it says design the majority of the village's bicycle transportation system. Would you want to design all of it? Or not necessarily? Is there areas where we wouldn't design
But
the system that it is safe and
So I guess,
Those daredevils, I thought that.
Is that why it's in there?
I think the idea kind of behind that being that way is because there would be opportunities to, say, add bike lanes, to certain streets that potentially may be more busy.
May
So,
differ.
so it might be something where it'll definitely help those who want to use it. But then, if you wanted to have it be safe for all users, it may.
I kind of
Look
thought
a
that's
little
where you were
different.
going with that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
that was, I mean, it's fine.
At least that's my take on how that is. So again, I think, the aspirational goal is to have things
The majority.
be for the majority, but there may be cases.
You can
where-
read it. It's fine with me. So I keep bringing this up because it's a major concern of mine, because I have, and somebody else in here has people that drive scooters. And they are going to be a major issue for us going forward. I guarantee you they are, because they are for other cities and villages. And yet we don't talk about scooters in here at all.
Or electric bikes.
Or well, I saw one place where there's e-bikes for training. So I know we talked about this, Joel, and were we gonna do something separate, or? I thought we talked about maybe doing something, but even under, to be honest with you, I'm like, okay, when we get into the education, I'm like, okay, how are we gonna address electric scooters in the middle school and the high school? Because I'm telling you, they're not gonna ride bicycles.
I thought we were lumping those, like the electric bicycles, under just plain old bicycles. And so whatever
Yep.
we come up with, we might be breaking it down into those things as you get into the meat of it, but I thought everything was kind of lumped, a bicycle could mean a couple of different things.
Okay, and I did see that the e-bikes were part of the education, but I didn't see specifically scooters, and maybe we don't need to do that. But Kyle and I shared some stuff with another city that he had sent out, right? And I said, I'm seeing that. I'm reading articles about it, and it's gonna be a major safety concern for us, because I watch the way the kids ride those electric scooters, and they don't follow the laws. And I have had neighbors ask me, well, what, because I told a couple neighbors, I said, there is new ordinance out where you have to wear helmets, blah, blah, blah. And they said, haven't seen anything. Nobody said anything at the school. So how are we, I'm getting off, we understand this. We can talk about this later.
Maybe that's call that a good segue, I guess. Well, or,
No, we don't
But-
want to address segues.
no, sorry, yeah.
Sure.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess any other, I'm just gonna quick go back.
Yep, we'll do that. Do that.
Chapter 1, any other comments or questions on that? Okay.
I thought it was well put together. I told you this before, but
Sure.
I do.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so then, yeah, if you want to advance the next one. Great. Okay, so I already got ahead of myself too when mentioning the community profile and demographics. That's actually chapter 2. So in my head, it was all part of the introduction, but yeah, so chapter 2, and what I'll do is just go through these things quick, and then I think we can get back to that
Sure.
discussion. Okay, yeah, updated. So the community profile is updated again, demographics. And, I think the big takeaway again from this, what's shown here is, you have a growing population and continuing to expand, especially kind of south and west. But, there's also, and much like the rest of the area, there's both a fair number of younger population in the village, but also an aging population too. And that's kind of where, again, we'll come to be like, how can you design things that kind of meet the needs of most users? And that's really the takeaway from that. And then the kind of the other, really the big part of this chapter is the existing plans, policies and programs. And so I updated all those and I had to go through and look at all the existing plans, specifically the comprehensive plan. There's a number of pages here where making sure that the recommendations that are in that are reflected here, or at least the things that are most relevant and pertinent. And that's in these tables. See, starting on page
23, I think.
16,
Or is it-
17, 19, yeah. So that's that part. Then also I reviewed the village ordinances and then had to do some consulting with staff just to make sure I had things right. And, there's still may be something that I missed, but just highlighting the connections between the different ordinances and relationship to bicycle and pedestrian planning. And then, yeah, this kind of related to what you were talking about, then we get into the existing education programs and existing enforcement measures and encouragement measures. So I worked with Rex on this, and then he also worked with village public safety staff too, just on the things that we know are being done now. But again, there might be other things that.
And something for
Yeah.
Tracy, looking at the old plan, there was a lot of maybe synergy is the word I'm looking for between public safety and WeBike back in the day in terms of JTV and training programs. And it seemed like we did a lot of stuff back then, but doesn't seem like there's as much going on. Maybe it's just because of staffing shortages, being able to do things. Are you still, for Devon's sake, is WeBike still consulting? I mean, other than I know you guys volunteer at the bike rodeo, or were there, you attended it anyway.
Yep.
Is there anything that WeBike or any other organization that you're familiar with that's doing with public safety? Because Tom didn't think there was anymore.
No, I don't think Peter's done anything for years with public safety specific to Ashwaubenon. It might have been something like in Brown County or Green Bay hosted a training, but it's been quite a few years.
And I know in terms of training in the schools,
Yeah,
you're not working directly with the schools anymore, are you?
No, we did the Safe Route to School plan many years ago and
Yeah.
haven't done anything since.
Now, I know
No.
public safety, if you notice in there, public safety one of their officers did put together an education program that is being offered or will be in the process of being offered in the fall and the spring to grades 5 and below. And so that's a positive thing that public safety is doing.
Yep.
And I guess I didn't even know that they were doing that yet, type of a thing. So, so we put that in there. And then we're still obviously doing the bike and walk to school encouragement.
Yep.
With the school district.
Yep.
Is there a reason they did it grade 5 and down?
Question for public safety.
I don't know if there is something
A lot of it may have to do with
where their resources are.
where the resources are. Well, also what the teachers want.
They have a note here, though. It says plans to expand the course to include middle school and high school at the end of that.
Yeah.
So they're at least looking at it.
And hopefully, as part of that, scooters and e-bikes, can be part of that education program.
I mean, the high school actually has they literally have bicycles and they can take them out for gym class. That's part of their class.
Oh, really?
That was from that grant, so we received that grant.
So that's why I'm like, these are very easy ways we can make
Safe Route to School grant. Let's get into
Because I'm not blaming the kids.
Remember?
In a lot of cases, they don't. To be honest with you, there's some rules I'm sure I don't know.
So I do see the teachers take groups out and then they're teaching them hand signals and riding around the track, riding around the block. So they do that. And they bought those through that. There is a special grant. It wasn't Safe Routes to
Safe Routes,
School.
no.
No, it was a
Yeah.
grant that they got. But that was part of the whole grant process.
Because they've even thought about it,
It's still a
if we as a group or the village could put together, maybe through public safety, the reason we want people to walk against traffic, the reason we want people not to wear black at night, the reason we don't want them to double walk at night, so that I don't sound like some guy that's just trying to be a smart aleck, right?
Yeah.
It's not for me, this is for your safety. This is what we're aware of.
Yeah.
Because I see it so often even yet, and I'm like, common sense would tell you, and I know we're getting off the bicycle, but it is part of it, it's pedestrian, right?
Yeah.
But so often, common sense would tell you you shouldn't be doing that, but yet people don't, they're not thinking about it, but yet, if you've ever driven in the dark, and you're not paying close attention, you can easily miss that person that's on the side of the road. And if you happen to, and we do it, you happen to be looking down or whatever, and it's the wrong time, we're very fortunate because we really don't have a lot of incidents in Ashwaubenon, but it could happen.
I almost picked off some people while I was biking home one night. They were walking wrong direction on the road, all in black. And luckily they talked and all of a sudden I was like, oh crap, I almost ran into him on a bicycle. So I wouldn't have seen him.
Yeah,
So, yeah, you're right. I
they
mean,
blend
just-
in.
Yeah.
And
It's an education thing, you know?
yeah, and I don't know if there is something we can do to hand out that would come from the village rather than from me.
Yeah.
That would mean more to them, I think, than some jerk that.
How about this? How about I contact public safety? Maybe Tom or the officer that developed the training program can come in and just kind of give us a brief synopsis of what the training program covers.
It'd be great to know where they got
Yep.
it from, because those officers, as we all know, are not trained in bicycle pedestrian safety. So
That was
I'm
another thing that was
wondering
in the plan.
why- Yeah, why?
And so we
Who put it
deleted
together, it'd be great
that
to see.
because I talked to Tom, I said, are these people, have they gone through that bike training? So back in the day, they obviously had more, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the number of staff and time.
Well, the state had the training that they paid for, and they paid an instructor to go around the state and do the training for law enforcement. They just don't have that course anymore, I don't provide it, so.
So they must have got the info from somewhere, so.
Yeah, hopefully they got a good curriculum, I'm sure they did some
I
research.
like that, yeah.
Yep,
Well, then
I do
maybe
too.
you can explain to you like what their plan is for training. 'Cause again, to me, I would think it'd be the opposite age groups you're in. 'Cause again, like those are kids that are gonna be going out by themselves versus like
Sure.
first grade to fifth grade, probably are gonna be with their parents who are gonna be, you know, like, so
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, it would be helpful to have, start somewhere, so I like that.
Because, you know, like you and I, we're in a stretch there, and it's not the only place in Ashwaubenon, but Pioneer, 25, they're driving 50, easy, because it's a straight shot. When I walk in the morning, I'm like, wow. And then the kids are going to school, and they're,
What's kind of funny, Dale, is I've driven by you at somewhat
That's
higher
over
rates
here.
of speed, and I see you as I'm driving by and like, oh God, I'm going too fast. Just because it hits me, it's like, oh.
Do you
It's
wear your
because-
yellow vest?
what's that?
Do you wear your yellow vest when you walk?
I wear a red jacket, and I walk out in the street because of the decline, and
That's
then
my
I
son.
see, because I'm walking against the vehicle, I always move over to the side, because I've done this myself, so I know, I'm not blaming that person. If
Right.
you're just not watching for 2 seconds, your steering wheel can turn.
Because I didn't walk in town, but my son-in-law gave me and instructed me I was to wear a vest.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well,
so that they
There's,
can
there's,
see,
there
can
is
see
value
you.
in
Yep.
this.
I wear the best when I walk my dog.
Yeah, I
Which
believe
you have
that.
to, now.
I
I have
say
to
it's
get
fine.
all
And
the
now
time.
even
It's
dogs have
pitch
vests
black.
that are.
Yeah,
thing that-
yeah, or the leashes.
Yeah, and they've even got lights on them that
Yes.
you
Yeah.
can see them.
But any street you
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
that's extended,
Yeah.
there's no stop signs.
Yeah, because especially when they park cars and then they walk out, they
Yes,
come
they
out
get around.
around the car
Yeah.
and you don't see them until they start getting out there.
Yeah, so that, just
Yeah.
coming back to this, those are, again, the main things here was making sure everything was as current as what I could find or could confirm with staff. So this section is trying to really tie together where there are other existing things already being done in the village and then the relationship to this plan. But yeah, if there are, I think, are any, well, either comments on this section or, you know, I could move into kind of next steps. And then kind of discuss what we'll be doing.
A couple of questions quick.
Sure.
On the page 25, the bipartisan infrastructure law, is that still going, do you know?
So it's going through 26,
Through 26. Okay.
but then after that, who knows what, so I would believe that next year would need to be a new or a federal transportation bill.
Okay.
But I guess that remains to be seen. So yeah,
Yeah.
Initially I was like, wait, there's no way that this is still.
That's what I was
in-
wondering too.
But yeah, I think because it's a 5-year thing,
Oh, yeah.
it would be through 26. So that's what we have currently for federal. And another thing, so I guess I'd say an omission, it wasn't in the previous plan, but I didn't put it in here because, so the Brown County bicycle and pedestrian plan would be something that should be in here, but we are going to be updating that next year. So I almost, well, I guess I could make reference to it.
Because there's gonna be a plan.
But
so-
yeah, it's just more anything.
You have to do that too?
Yes, well, I believe that's how it'll work, you know, we'll always see, but it's slated to be updated next year. So I guess I was just thinking there wouldn't be anything specific that's in there now will be outdated by next year, but I can still reference it because it'll, again, have a relationship to this. And really, that relationship is that will reference this plan also. So it's more, again, not setting the village's agenda, but acknowledging what we all come up with here and how that should align then with that plan.
It's interesting because I think when I reviewed the Brown County one, they actually referenced like Howard, the village, Pier, their plans.
Yeah, and that'll be part of it is we'll be making sure that
So
we
it
acknowledge
goes-
every
goes
plan,
back and forth
yeah.
then.
Yeah,
okay.
because, you know, if you're looking at a big picture, you need to understand what everyone else is doing and then again, how things connect because again, we're a bigger community of smaller communities. And getting around is, you know, you want to go beyond the borders, obviously.
Couple questions on page 27, just the little box on the side. So for sidewalk mileage, 32 miles, so does that include Devon? So if I'm just picking a road circle, we have sidewalks on both sides of the road, let's say. Does each of those miles each side of that road get
Yeah.
counted as miles then? So
Yeah,
if there's
so-
1 mile sidewalk, it'd be considered 2.
Right, so if it's on both sides, they're
Double.
a double, yeah, so it's not
It's not
road-
lineal feet, it's,
Well, yeah, it's not the road mile or road distance itself, it's the actual
sidewalk.
sidewalk. So that's why there's, you know, it might almost, well, yeah, maybe seem like there's more
Lot
than
more,
you would
that's-
imagine, but
yeah.
it's because it's not double counting, but
It's
you're
the same
counting-
road, but there's sidewalks on each
Yeah.
side, so it's counted as miles on each side.
So Michelle, if you're getting confused, their page 27 is different.
Oh,
And
I'm
grab
sorry.
one of those packets there. There is no, I don't see that on the side on page 27. I'm looking.
It would be interesting in this box, and I don't know if we appropriate.
His 27 is our 34.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I had page numbers, but they're on, so it ended up only being on one side, but then there were packet page.
Thanks, Kelly. That's what it is. Got it.
And I guess if you say a packet page number, I might not know what
Yeah. Well, it does say 27.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, sorry, yeah, no, so he's got little page numbers and then.
if in that little box,
you're.
if it would be appropriate on like how many miles of roadway we have in the village of Ashwaubenon, then you kind of have a comparison of. We have 70 miles of roadway, and I think in here somewhere it said how many miles of roadway, but I couldn't put my finger back on it. Because then you could see, okay, so we have 70 miles, how many miles actually have sidewalks? in that area, because that's kind of a
Yep.
good thing to know, to be aware of, because it gives you an idea.
Or even bike lanes or.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in bike lanes, there's 4.6 miles, well, we have 70 miles of road, and we
Yeah.
have 4 miles of
Mhm.
bike lanes.
That's some work.
That's not much, yeah. So then you get at least a feel for that,
Sure.
of how much that is.
Yep. Yeah.
The other thing on the map, map 2.2,
Mhm.
so it'd probably be the last page of your packet. guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, there is a bike trail shown on North Road, and I have no idea where a bike trail is on North Road. I don't believe there's one there, but I may totally have missed it. But, and I was thinking that
Come
got
on,
put,
you don't miss any bike trails.
well, no, I was thinking maybe that was put in there because
You don't-
they're gonna put the bridge across and
That's
everything.
what because that was proposed.
Yeah, and then it
wondering if
never
that's-
came to be.
So is that not existing?
There's nothing
So
there.
we, and
Unless it's
that's,
hidden somewhere.
in our GIS data, it shows that it's there. So if it is not there, then,
It's not.
Yeah, there's nothing on North Road.
okay.
It'd be good if it was there.
It would be nice. It'd be nice
That's
if that bridge was
That's a
there.
pretty nice hairy curve
Can we
there.
talk about a bike route on North Road between?
Yeah, starting from South Point all
South
the way
Point and
over.
Tigerland and over, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we did talk about a bike route.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and it is just this, yeah, you probably know, this is just showing what's here and we'll get to
Right,
this.
yeah, what's.
And I don't know, in terms of multi-use trails, I don't know if the new Ashwaubenon River Trail is included in that. Because I don't think I don't think Francine's updated that with the county yet. That extra mileage
I will-
around Ashwaubenon.
Check on that, because we did have, well, there was some stuff that looked like it was on the eastern edge, but it's not here on the map, but then looking at the aerials, I'm like, is that there or not? So I didn't know
So
where,
there's a trail around, now a paved trail, 10-foot paved trail
Okay.
around the whole exterior of Ashwaubenon.
okay,
Well, most of it, except for that woods by the one.
okay, so that is in fact there.
Just a quick
Okay.
thought, Tracy, for us for future, but we just talked about that and then how Brown County's gonna
Yeah.
do the fairgrounds
Yep.
and into there. But then they're also gonna do Main Street and Reed Street. I forget what year it's coming up.
Yeah,
We gotta make sure we're on top of that, so we
Right.
go to those
so we
meetings.
can connect and.
Absolutely.
River Trail. Yep, I
So
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the connection to the fairgrounds is in the budget.
Yep, I saw that.
It is in the budget.
Yeah, I know Matt.
In fact, I met Matt at Ashwaubenon last week and he wanted to ride the trail with me, so he knew what his trail was going to connect to.
Nice.
Plus, some of the cracking issues we're having
I've
at
seen that he's
Ashwaubenon are
having
the same that he's
this
having.
Foxwood Trail, I have much cracks in it too. Huh, Northeast, I think. I didn't do- Should say that. Yes. The other question I have is, again, that little box,
Mhm.
wide curb lanes are mentioned, 19.6 miles of wide curb lanes. What do you consider wide curb lanes? Is that distance is that? Is there parking allowed in that? Is that, what does that mean? And I just don't understand what
Yeah.
you mean by a wide curb lane.
Yeah, so I think the definition here, and,
Is it in there somewhere? Did I miss the definition?
well,
Or,
it may not be stated, but I think that's essentially what all the visually narrowed lanes, or at least that includes those. And then I think if it's,
yeah, because like Fernando's listed as a wide curb lane. There's not a wide curb lane in Fernando.
okay,
There's maybe a little one like this.
Yeah.
but- And some of these that are shown in here seem like they don't have, but again, I don't know what your definition is of a wide curb lane. So I just,
yeah, and I don't know. if
I'm not
it's-
sure. Morris has a wide curb lane. Does it? Has parking on part of it, you know?
Wide curb lane, so I think where Devin got this data from is from our GIS. We had a map that was
Oh,
created.
yeah,
that
you're right.
Showed where all the visually narrow lanes were at one time. Now, whether or not that's accurate, that needs to be verified.
Okay.
But the wide curb lane is a reference to that fog line or that shoulder line that you find in an urban environment. And there is some reference to this in the MUTCD. Visually narrow lanes, as we know, isn't referenced, but a wide curb lane is. So a wide curb lane is just a marked lane. That's all it is. It's not, it can be used for multiple things, from parking to walking to biking. It's just, think of it as a paved shoulder in an urban cross section. So you have a curb and gutter, you have a shoulder. That shoulder is marked with a white line. That shoulder could be 2 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, whatever. There's no specific purpose for it, other than it's, here's your travel lane, and then here's the excess that's considered the shoulder.
But it always has a curb.
No, if it's a rural environment, like North Road's rural,
Yep.
that one will have a white line, an edge line, like you would find in an urban environment. But you could have a gravel shoulder like North Road has, or you could have a paved shoulder. If you go on a lot of the county trunk highways, very old county trunk highways, there is no paved shoulder at all. And then over time, they kind of found that there's an advantage of having even up to a 2-foot paved shoulder off the edge line, because that helps maintain from gravel getting kicked up onto the travel lane. And then they said, you know what, it's even safer if we add at least 5 feet of paved shoulder width. Not necessarily for bicyclists or pedestrians, but it's actually safer for vehicles too. Because if you're not paying attention, you're looking at your phone and you kind of veer off, you don't hit that lip between the pavement and the gravel and lose control of your vehicle.
Unless you use the setting on the new cars where it keeps you between the lanes.
So that
I
was
use it
the
all the
idea,
time.
is I think at the last committee, at the workshop, there was discussion of trying to get rid of this definition of visually narrow lane, because there isn't one. But a wide curve lane is referenced as a shoulder or a paved shoulder, if you will.
Maybe if that's just defined in there, so
Yeah.
people understand it
Yeah.
better, because there's, like you said, there's a million different things that they are.
I think the idea was, we don't want to create these visually narrow lanes in our plan, that this is an accommodation then, because it's not an accommodation. I think that was the issue that the committee had, is we were looking at this as an accommodation for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's not. It's just a space. It could be used for a variety of things. It doesn't accommodate any one of those in particular. But if you really wanted to set aside an accommodation for pedestrian, that's usually in the form of a trail or sidewalk. And if you want to accommodate bicyclists, you're really looking at creating an environment that's a marked route or a designated or dedicated bicycle, right? That was the idea behind it.
We do appreciate you putting back down on Pioneer for the kids and me, because it does make a difference. Even though it could be an issue.
One follow-up question for you, Tracy, because you mentioned, I don't know if that was just as an example or it actually was for Circle, are there?
There are.
I just
There
made
are
an example, there are no sidewalks on
There are.
Circle. There are no sidewalks on Circle.
Oh, no, there are
Oh, I'm sorry,
wide curb
there's
lanes.
visually narrow lanes.
It was just
or
when you
whatever they're
said
called.
sidewalks and then like.
I was
oh,
just giving an
is
example,
there-
I'm sorry. I should've
No, no,
used
no,
Circle.
I just wanted to make sure that's not.
Yeah, no.
Seem that or we need to update that.
Now, if wide curb lane isn't the right reference point, that's fine, but if we want to just indicate, areas where we have marked drive lanes or something like that, we can change the nomenclature within the plan. But again, I think the idea.
That's a fancy word, Joel.
Whatever the least fanciest word would be, to just at least identify that we've delineated the travel lane from the rest of the pavement area. That's kind of the idea behind it, right?
Yep.
And so I think, Tracy, you were questioning, what dictates how wide that curb lane is? And, under the MUTCD, you're really designing it based on the travel lane for motorists. So if you have a 37-foot wide face-to-face travel, paved area, you got a center line. Now that center line could be offset, right? Based on whether or not you want to permit parking or maybe no parking or whatever. But that center line is generally going to be marked in yellow, right? That's your center line, again, could be offset, could be centered on the road. And then your travel lane is, I think the MUTCD requires at least a 10-foot travel lane. Brian would be able to articulate this clear. It's either 9 or 10 feet, but the ideal travel lane width is 12 feet for vehicles. So whatever that remainder is, so you're gonna paint your white fog line or your edge line 12 feet from center, and then whatever that distance is from that white fog line to the face of curb, that's your white curb line, if that makes sense. So that's what dictates it. It's gonna be more based on where the center line of the road is delineated, and then how wide that travel lane is for vehicles to dictate then how wide that curb lane is gonna be. Should be anyway.
Oneida Street has a wide curb lane. When they rebuilt the 4 lanes, they kept the outside lane a little wider than the inside lane. So that's a wide curb lane. So that was just my question of what is,
So
you know,
what I
so
would
it's
maybe
different
ask
for
Devin
things,
to
there's
do
no
is
parking
just-
on it.
I'm thinking out loud too with the language, it would be a marked wide curb line. Because you can have an unmarked wide curb, or you could have a marked wide curb, right?
Oneida's not marked.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe for nomenclature, just that simple language is, these are marked wide curb lanes, indicating that there's a white line.
With you mentioning that, I'm kind of almost wondering, so like for on map 2-2,
2-2, yeah.
do we even want to say, do you want wide curb lane to be shown as existing bicycle facilities, or is that almost like a separate, like it's identified but not considered a bicycle facility?
I mean, the reason they put Oneida, or the original reason they did Oneida and put the white curb lane was to have space for bicyclists. But it's not a bike lane, it's not, it's just a wider curb lane. But then, the thing that's confusing, I guess, Oneida Street doesn't have anything marked on it. No one would really know if there's white curb lane unless you kind of thought about it. Then you have Circle, and they have marked lines on there that designate the white curb lane, just like Ridge, South Ridge has the lines on it. So it's kind of confusing in a way, and I think that's what people get confused about. They don't know the difference between a visual lane, a bike lane, and a white curb lane. So I don't know if there's a way to describe it better, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I think the other thing that I was intending to add here and will add is, I think, definitions of, like, specifically after this, add definitions of each thing and
terms or
just,
what- yeah.
and an example. of
Yeah, that would be a
each
good
thing.
idea.
And that was, I guess, the thing I was scrambling on, but then realized I can get all this done and get it to you, or I can keep messing around
Yeah,
and not get
exactly,
it to you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's where I left off with that, but
Yeah. No,
that
that'd be
will
great.
definitely be,
Yeah,
Be
definition
a part of
section
that.
or whatever, then
Yeah.
people know like even what a bike lane is. Some
Yeah.
people have no idea.
right, yeah.
What is a
and
bike
because
lane?
there is a
I don't know.
specific-
Versus a bike route.
Right, yeah, what's a
Yeah.
bike route? What's,
So maybe the question is, to that point, does the wide curb lane even need to be identified in the plan? If
Maybe it
It's not an
doesn't.
accommodation.
No.
Why does it even, it's really used for a variety of purposes. It could be for traffic calming purposes. It could be for just, again, delineating what that travel lane is. If we needed to offset travel within the roadway because we
Yeah,
have
that
extra
space.
parking or whatever, maybe that just comes out. And
Right.
it's not
It's not
even
clear.
a thing for this group, because you're not saying we want people to walk or bike there, because you're saying you're gonna allow that on any street anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah.
lawfully they can.
Yeah.
So what does it matter?
Right.
Are we trying to eliminate the VNL from any of our verbiage going forward?
I thought that was the discussion that we had about 2 months ago, is that we were trying to eliminate that, because there's
Yeah,
no
that's-
real legal bearing or standing. to
Right.
it.
Yeah, so using.
I just wanna make
fog
sure.
lane or marked
I was
wide
pretty sure
curb
we had,
lane,
but-
yeah, utilizing the other.
When you started talking about it, I'm like, where did we end up with?
Well, and to Jessica's question, if we don't include even white curb lane, it's just not a thing. So if somebody says, well, I want you to paint some lines on this road. Well, why are we painting lines on Rice Road?
Yeah.
What is the point? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Generally, again, it's to delineate what the travel lanes are and where center line is on the road. But that's it. It's not to say this is a reserved space for pedestrians or bicyclists. It's because it's not.
It's really for the drivers.
It's more for the motorists to
It
know
is.
where they should
To
be
know
aligned
where
with
to
the
direct
road.
them, which ultimately then helps the person on the side, but really the line itself is not for the pedestrian, it's for the driver.
Like I
Just
said,
say,
with
"Stay
their
here."
with their new vehicles, they just push the button, they won't go over the line.
Or if there's no line, then they're going over there.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe they won't even have to drive it anymore.
So the group as a whole, Devin, what are your thoughts on just eliminating that?
Well, I think,
line curve line?
you know, it would potentially clear up some confusion, especially if someone's not familiar. And that's where, you know, the question I had asked about showing it in the map, because it makes it seem like it's a
A
specific
thing.
facility
Right,
when
and it isn't.
it isn't. It could be used that way, but that's not the
Yeah.
purpose of it.
How have you done it in other plans, Kevin?
Well,
You
I
ever
don't
had
think,
that?
I'm trying to think.
Like Alloway's resident, now you just did theirs last.
Yeah, so Alloway didn't, so now what's in their plan is only the bike lanes and marked bike routes, but there are no, I don't think there are any wide curb lanes identified. I do know Bellevue, there's some places in Bellevue that have a similar thing where it's a marked line for the travel lane, but it's not a bike lane because it's not a marked route.
Yeah.
And I'd have to look again if I think we just removed, initially, they were mistakenly identified as bike lanes, but I think we just removed those altogether as a thing, and it's just a street.
Okay, and maybe that's the best idea, Joel, just not list them off. Yeah, they're too, and they, you know, they cannot be so different.
Right.
Yeah.
And outside of the scope of this plan and this effort, I know our Public Works Department ultimately wants to get to what we call a typical specifications manual that outlines cross sections. So I know in Howard, as an example, and I think we used this a couple months ago when we brought this up, all of their collector streets are, under their policy now, when a road gets reconstructed, it's a collector, it gets sidewalk on both sides, and then it either gets reviewed for potential bicycle lane or marked curb line. So if you go down Glendale or any of these kind of collectors, it'd be comparable to like a Cormier. Cormier would get reconstructed, sidewalk on both sides. And then because there's houses on both sides of the street, there wasn't a willingness to put in the dedicated bike lanes on that street because of the parking restriction. They didn't have the road width. So they marked the line, and that's just all it is. It's just a shoulder. That's all it is. And they do that on all the collectors. I think it's primarily just to try to calm traffic, if you will, because it gives that visual reference of that travel.
Yeah, because that's another road they fly about 50 miles an hour. I have a rental on that Glendale Avenue. They fly.
Yeah.
There's no stop signs.
They fly everywhere these days. The only other question I had was if we wanted to mention complete streets at all in like that section that you have, because I know state doesn't have complete streets anymore. Federal does. But would it be something at least to mention? I don't know if it belongs here or maybe in the latter chapters that you're working on yet.
So there is a mention of it, because I thought I saw it. So at the on the first page,
Okay.
in the introduction,
Oh, yeah, got it,
literally
got it.
at the
Yep,
bottom,
okay, yep,
there's that, just the paragraph.
okay.
And I think that was a continuation from
The old
the
one.
previous plan. And
That's right, thank
which
you.
I guess, yeah, I was intending to leave in.
Yep.
But, you know, if there's, again, with all the changes
Yeah.
at other levels,
Yeah.
you
Who
know.
knows, it may come back, or maybe go away to
Yeah.
federal and come back here or whatever.
And again, there's nothing, saying that, you know, the village couldn't
Do
have
their
that
own.
or aspire to that. It just, as far as other entities go, that's changed.
Sorry, I missed that.
No, it's.
The only other question I had was like, and it is mentioned here a little bit, but like the amount of high density housing that we're putting in, you do address it in here saying, you know, you got more and the sports entertainment district and all that. And again, I had e-bikes on my list too and scooters, but I don't know if any more needs to be put in about any of that or even e-bikes and scooters specifically mentioned more so.
Well, one thing I was thinking about, and this would kind of be a preview for the next
Yeah.
meeting, was adding, so the policies which I mentioned, which have been with the goals and objectives, moving those back. And a lot of those are staying the same because they tie together with the goals and objectives, many of which also stay the same. And one thing that I was thinking about was adding a policy related to, or the possibility of adding something related to e-bikes and e-scooters. And I guess the policy wouldn't be so much like a legal, we will do this, or we'll, but it's something to, let's, like a way to stay on,
Keep it in front of us.
Keep it,
yeah, as an issue of consideration,
Concerns in the
as,
future,
as
yeah.
things change, well, yeah, especially if technology continues to change or there seems to be new issues coming up beyond what already is there. So that was something I was thinking about adding into that. And I think that would be, for sure we could discuss that with that section. And I think that would be, at least in my opinion, the right place to do that. But I guess depending on how you all feel about that, or we look at it next time and then if it either seems like it should be somewhere else or you want to look at it differently, I guess that would be my suggestion.
Just want to, since we've had this topic come up a few times now today on the e-bikes and scooters, just touch on, I think it's certainly a worthwhile goal for the committee to have in the plan that indicates that we'll review it on a reoccurring basis if necessary. But I was asked to participate in a panel discussion last week with the Wisconsin Bike Federation and some other individuals throughout the state of Wisconsin. They had DOT officials there, traffic engineers, planners. We were asked because we're on the forefront of enacting or have enacted an ordinance related to e-bikes and e-scooters. So that's how we got involved in that conversation. So the key thing is we enacted an ordinance that's consistent with state statute that regulates e-bikes and e-scooters. And we model the definitions of all those, and the question remains, and it's certainly a question that this community has the right and privilege to take, is where these devices can be used outside of where they are lawfully allowed under statute. So whether that be sidewalks or trails, that's the big question, right? And so that's a local decision, and locally we made that determination that we're going to allow bicycles, electric bicycles, to be ridden on the sidewalks, and e-scooters the same. Now they have to operate with due caution and care. They have to yield to pedestrians. They have to follow basic traffic law as it's outlined in statutes. So we have what we need in place. It comes down to education. It comes down to enforcement. But as we talk about in this meeting all the time, what's the number one issue and complaint we receive from our constituents? Speeding. Do we have enough officers to enforce speeding? Do we have enough officers to enforce proper use of a bicycle or electric scooter? Probably not, right? So it's going to continue to be a reoccurring problem until we increase enforcement. Education. We can educate adults all day long about speeding down the roads. Do you think they're going to listen? Probably not. We can educate people on bikes and scooters all day long. Are they going to listen? Maybe, maybe not, right? Doesn't mean we shouldn't try, we should give up. I'm just saying, like, I don't know that we're necessarily going to see a whole lot of tangible results on our own, because this is going to be a broader issue beyond Ashwaubenon to solve. With that point, the big topic of conversation that came not necessarily from us, but from the other panelists, is this issue related to e-bikes and e-scooters. We always talk about e-bikes and e-scooters, and in a broad sense, we're talking about two different things, right? E-bikes, as they're defined in statutes, are pretty basic, right? You can pedal them, you can get up to a certain speed, and they're totally fine. They're assisted type devices, right? Where they're helping the bicyclist move like as a bicyclist, making it a little easier. These bikes that you're seeing where the big problem is are what they call e-motos, right? They're electronic motorcycles. And that's the issue, and that's where it comes down to enforcement, and maybe some changes even at the state level that clearly defines what those are, so that we can enforce those. Scooters are the same thing. They're being classed, people are viewing them as, oh, they're electric scooters. No, they're actually e-motos that look like an electric scooter. They operate much faster, they're much bigger, all that stuff. That again is an enforcement issue and maybe some additional definition and clarification in statute. We've done what we can from an ordinance standpoint to enforce the law as it's written and to provide uniformity within it. It comes down to us identifying and enforcing and educating what is really an e-bike, what is an e-moto, what is really an electric scooter, what is an e-moto, and then having our officers go out and diligently enforce it. So again, we can certainly review it. I think it's important for us to do that because technology will change. Statutes will change because they're going to eventually come up with some kind of definition as to what these e-motos are, because they don't clearly define them yet. And it may make our job easier or it may make our job harder. That's to be determined. But I want to rest assured with the group that we, in confidence, I think we have enough tools within the toolbox to enforce with the way our code is written. It just comes down to us having the resources to do it and do it effectively to where you as people out in the community are feeling like there's a positive net change in behavior from the people that are using the devices or the parents that are going out and buying these things. There are the folks that were on this panel discussion, these are traffic engineers, traffic planners. They have individual on there that owns some bike shops throughout the state. They're doing everything that they can too to try to educate people on the private sector side. So I feel good that there are people out there trying to do the best that they can to educate people so that they're not being a nuisance or a safety hazard for not only themselves, but for the motorists too.
Well, and
So, go ahead.
there's that group, I can't space the name, but it's basically the bicycle manufacturers group, and I don't know if they're on that panel, but they just put a really good article together explaining what an e-bike is versus e-moto. E-motor.
E-moto, I think is what they're using.
That's what
And
they're,
I was gonna get out to everybody, but it really explains it well, because obviously they're manufacturers, they do not want all these laws put in place that when the e-bikes
Correct.
are gonna say, you can't have them anywhere, and their sales are gonna go down. And the other bikes are causing problems.
Right.
Because
There's
they're out of
areas and
control.
stuff that are, right.
Yes, yes.
yeah, that's what I'll just echo, because I've not participated in, but watched that. And it really seems kind of like everyone across the board was saying, it's really the e-motos
Yes.
that people see them and think e-bikes, but
Right.
they aren't. But the problem is there's also some that look awfully
Right. They
a
put
lot.
pedals on them. People
Yeah.
react to them, put
They
pedals
look
on
like
them.
them, but
And they go really fast, because I've seen one occasionally on Omega Street down the sidewalk, and he's going fast.
yeah. So the pedals are almost, well, like a superficial.
Yes, they're just
Thing.
sticking them on there so they
And
think
then
it's a bike.
There's some too where people are, I think a lot of people, it sounds like, get them, like they order them online and they may be coming from.
They think they're
who
e-bikes.
knows, right, yeah, they may even be advertised as
As
that,
e-bikes,
but
yes.
they're not, they don't actually meet the definition.
Right.
So that's where I was gonna go, Joel, exactly what you said. So I have a 7th grade grandchild. And he went from e-scooter to e-dirt bike. If you wanna talk about issues, now the dirt bikes, they have no idea where they can ride them, or they do and they do it, right? So that's coming.
Oh, yeah.
Besides
Yeah.
this, so I agree with the safety we don't have enough people, like you said. You're not gonna be able to monitor people that are on the road and people, but we really haven't put anything, and we are, which I like to see here, it looks like we're putting in place through public safety, at least some type of training for the kids, which is good. But it's not just the kids, because his dad bought that online. I'm sure that online place didn't say, oh, do you know? No, they wanted to sell an e-dirt bike.
Yep.
And they did.
Yep.
Right, and him and his buddies, there's a whole group of guys, they
Cruising down the street.
cruise,
Yep.
no, not so much the
No.
street, during pass.
Yeah.
right? Because they can get from out of town into Cedarburg.
Yeah.
Right, where all the action is.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, on the tractor trailer. Yeah.
So,
Well, I think honestly, some of the demographic stuff that's in here is also what's gonna continue to push for that, right? Like,
yeah,
people aren't, like, look at even at our high school, when I was 16, like, everyone wanted to drive, everyone wanted to get a car, less and less kids are doing that. A lot of them are using different devices like this to get around, either because they can't afford to do the route of driver's license and cars, so this is like their substitution to, and or this is just the new norm. So like from both sides of it, you're seeing that happen, that I think it is going to continue to.
this conversation I had with a neighbor who has a high school student said, you know, it'd be very valuable to know what the ordinance is, the new ordinance, because I would use that on my son, who says, well, mom, they do it. And the moms get together because you have, right? They all want to know what's going on with their kids and where they are. And I'm not into that because my kids are gone, but I get it. Everybody knows what's going on and they want to share this information with the other parents that, no, my son is not taking his scooter here because he's not allowed to, or whatever his e-scooter. Or they're not supposed to be riding 5 abreast of each other or what have you. And she says, I'm thinking about him for safety, but the other parents are also coming to me asking me, what are the ordinances? What are the new ordinances? And
I
so
do
we
think
need
when
to
you
make
guys
sure
put
we
that
get
out
that
this year, I
published.
feel like that made a way around fairly well, which I think, continuing to do that, like, I feel like it cracked me up a little bit how many people were like, what, I have to register my, I'm like, no, that part's not actually new. So that part was kind of funny, but I do feel like the helmet piece and all of that, a lot of people are like, oh, I love this, because now my son stops arguing with me that everyone else can't. Like, I'm like, nope. It's
So have
legal."
they
So
published
did.
this or where did he learn from?
They had it was in the news and then it went on the Facebook and that's where,
Did some media.
Oh,
conferences.
okay.
so this summer, and I feel like I got a lot of texts about it through, because when people asking because of Chris, they were like, what is this?
Okay.
And so, I mean, I do feel like
Well, that's
that
good,
helps.
because
Like
I haven't
said,
talked to her since we originally talked about it, that the public safety officers had been given that.
Yeah, so I think that helped a lot when you guys had, like you said, you guys defined some of those things, did that, I think that helped. I think that's where we just need to keep doing the education. I think doing it at the school would be huge. And so,
Did he took you off your?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
sorry.
it's it's interesting discussion, and I think we'll continue to have that one, obviously. But so I covered chapter 2. Anyone else have any comments on that part? Yeah, yep, you got it. Thank you. Yeah, so the next, what I'm working on now and want to have ready for next time. So the existing conditions and needs assessment / analysis is in currently chapter 4. So in the existing plan, which I'll be reviewing and looking at that. And it's, again, some analysis and maybe working with you guys just on, I think, some of the things in here and seeing what's relevant still or not. But the bigger part then will be again, kind of what I'd call the action items. It's, again, policies, and then looking at the implementation, which will be, again, strategies and actions that the village can pursue as opportunities come up, and identifying, again, key places that infrastructure or sidewalks, bike lanes, and so forth would be especially important. So that's really the next time, and that's where I'd say it all comes together. One thing, so that'll be a decent amount of content. And one idea that Rex and I had talked about, is potentially having you all look at that and, if things look good, having that be kind of the final draft. But it may also make sense to do that. And then if there's any comments or things we need to revise it all, come back in January just for a final go of the draft, and then have it be ready for the approval process after that. And time-wise, I think that would still work, because again, most of the work is going to be happening between now and December, so that's not too much of an issue for me. And may just be easier for the group, I think. So that was kind of my thought, and what I'm leaning towards is basically doing 2 more meetings with you all as far as this goes. And hopefully that would be all we need.
So really, you're talking maybe like 3 more chapters left then?
Yeah,
Propose
and
each a chapter?
yeah, and really the policies is only a couple of pages. I think the existing conditions and needs assessment is kind of going to be more straightforward too, because it's data. And then, yeah, the last part is probably the part that we'll want to focus the most on. And I'm hopeful that we can cover that all then. But, you know, I guess we can always, we'll take it and see where we get.
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe try to do it in December, and if we don't get to that piece, or you don't have time to finish that last piece or whatever, we can always push it into January too.
But yeah, I think the idea would be to, for sure, try and get the blessing of you all January.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks for putting the first 2 together and bringing them to us today.
Yeah,
To get them knocked off out of the way, and now,
Yeah.
we're on the back end.
Do you think, it's so hard you to answer this question, but that you'd be ready for December? Because if you are, I think we need a quorum. We need to get together again if he's gonna go through all the work to make sure we have people here to be able to move forward for January if we have to go to January. Do we send out a notice that if you can all possibly make sure that so that we can keep
What's the
moving?
date on the next one, Cal? December what? Or did we cancel our December one?
November
The
8th. The 8th, yep.
December 8th. That's right, because we're moved back. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, you put all time into it and make sure we have a quorum for it.
Yeah,
You put out an email then tomorrow, just asking, saying it's important, December 8th meeting, can we have a head count and make sure that we're gonna have enough to be able to do what we want to do.
And it's gonna be a quicker turnaround for you because we're a week
Yeah,
later
I
now.
was just.
So
sitting
you're
here,
gonna
it's
have
like,
to-
Yeah, there's,
So you're gonna have to see if you can get
Yeah,
that
that
done
would
by
be-
that date. And give us time to look at it before the meeting, so we
yeah.
can peruse it. Okay, any other, Devin, anything else to add? Joel, Rex, anything that you guys want to add to this? And any other questions on the committee members that you have for Devin, or suggestions or? anything?
Yeah, I've covered what I want to
Which
cover.
one, Joe?
Yeah, Devin, I don't want to, if you get to the point where you don't see where that's possible for the youth.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Right,
I guess would there be, well, is there any, I know, as you move forward in December, obviously it gets tougher. Is there any possibility that it could be shifted a week?
we have so many vote, board get shifted and,
Yeah, and I figure better ask now than if it's not possible, it's not, and that's fine.
We could, it would have to stay on a Monday. We do have, our village board meeting did get moved up to that Tuesday, the 16th. So if we did move it a week later, we could do it on the 15th. If that works.
We could if need be.
Okay.
Yeah.
15.
Okay.
maybe Cal, if you could just maybe check with everybody and see if the 8th or the 15th, which one,
Yeah,
or
let's
both,
do
just
both.
get some feedback from the committee, and then whatever one seems to be the most, do both of
I
those
guess-
dates work for you, Devin?
Yeah, so the Mondays, this time is fine, and I've been blocking it off and kind of know when it happens. Yeah, and well, if it were possible to do the 15th, I know that would
Be your preference,
be,
gives you a little
it
more
would
time.
help me, yeah, just give a little more, well,
So do we just want to like skip the 8th and
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we just, yeah.
go for the 15th?
well, and as, you know, I'm sitting here thinking it's like
I can't
next
do
week
that on the
is
15th, okay.
an abbreviated week too,
No,
so,
no, we got-
yeah.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
what I said. I don't want to put pressure.
Yeah.
You're in the driver's seat on this. You tell us what you need to make this work.
But if that would be possible, that would be wonderful.
I'm trying to think of, know who else is on, because Kim's on that PAC board too.
Kim's online yet, isn't she, or she go?
You still there?
I'm still here and I would have the same time pressure that Jessica has, but that is up to the group.
Because both of us have the PAC board meeting that night on the 15th at 5. So we could do the 15th, but we'd have to probably leave at 4:30, 4:45.
Is it,
We start earlier?
yeah, but
Does that work out?
Guys are killing me here.
This will be a big thing that we chalk off though.
Yeah.
If this gets done.
I could do.
Michelle,
earlier
can you
that day.
make it?
I was just checking to see.
Kim, does earlier start on that day work for you or no?
That would be
I could
fine.
start earlier, yes.
Okay, so worst case scenario, we can get a quorum together. If you can make it, I'll definitely make it.
Yeah, I think
Michelle,
I think I can.
one of you guys.
I can, yeah, if it's earlier, we can make it. Yeah, even if you did 3, because
Okay.
we have from 3 to
4:30?
4:30.
4:30, yeah.
Or do 2:30.
You're down during that meeting, you can go through things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you get it to us as early as you can, so
Well,
people
yeah,
have time to
that'll
look
be-
at it and I'll have a chance. to
Yeah, that
read
was
it.
my, yeah, give them that extra week,
Yeah.
so we get a chance, even if it's at least a couple of days before, she can read through it.
Yeah, I mean, usually we get the agendas by Friday or something. All right, anything else on that? We'll shoot for the 15th then, shoot for trying to start at 3.
3.
Cal, if you can just get a
Yeah, I will.
email out, that would be great. All right, any items for the next agenda? We did just mention one a while ago. What the heck was it? We're gonna put on the next
I
agenda?
don't think we will, I don't think we
Not
should.
sure.
roll.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
maybe January.
So that's the public safety presentation.
Yes,
on
yes.
their-
Sometime.
Yes,
their,
I know there's some. Okay.
session about when it's-
Okay. So maybe we'll put it from January, February, whatever, to do the public safety part of it.
And I guess I would say, just for the wrap up of this, I anticipate talking more obviously for the next meeting, but then my hope would be that the final draft approval would be quicker and shorter.
Yeah.
We covered all the
Gone through
things
everything.
and,
Yeah.
and then it's not a form, I don't want to say formality, but more of a be good with it. So.
Does village board have to approve this too, Joe?
Yep.
All right, okay, anything else? Otherwise, a motion to adjourn would be welcome. Motion.
I'll second.
Second by Dale. All those
I
in
should
favor
have
say
let
aye.
Michelle do
Aye.
that.
Opposed? All right, we're out of here.
Okay,
Four
and then the
fifty-two.
first,
Thank you,
second one.
everybody.